4 minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
To infinity and beyond.
He's live. He's nationwide. This is the Zach Gelb Show. Here's your host, Zach Gelb.
Live from the Play Show, yet not overly ostentatious studios of the Infinity Sports Network here in beautiful New York City, sitting on top of the 10th floor of 345 Hudson Street. Welcome on in to what is a Thursday edition of the Zach Gelb Show across all of our great local Infinity Sports Network affiliates, Sirius XM, Channel 158, the free Odyssey app, and as always, streaming live on YouTube. 855-212-4227 is the number to jump on in. 855-212-4227. And you could always get at me on Instagram, where I'm straight flexing, or via the good old cesspool of Twitter X, at Zach Gelb. That is ZACHGELB. We got a awesome Thursday night football game tonight to kick off week 10 of the NFL season, as we do have the Cincinnati Bengals and the Baltimore Ravens. A little Joe Burrow, a little Lamar Jackson. Ravens are 6-3, Bengals are 4-5, and this is an enormous test tonight for the Cincinnati Bengals, where not only can Joe Burrow and the Bengals say, okay, we have survived this rough stretch to start off the year and get back into the mix at 5-5. This would by far and away be their biggest win of the season when you look at the four opponents and the four dreadful opponents that they have defeated. But you could also maybe start to see the campaign for Joe Burrow to win the MVP, as he is top 5 in passing touchdowns, top 5 in QBR, and also top 5 in passing yards this year. So if Burrow wins tonight, I know the MVP right now is Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, it feels like, and I slightly still lean with Josh Allen, but maybe, just maybe, this could be the jumpstart of a Joe Burrow MVP run. But we'll have a whole lot of time to get into that matchup throughout the next 3 hours. Shane Beamer, the head football coach at South Carolina, after his team's enormous victory up against A&M, he's going to stop by 58 minutes from now, to be precise, at the top of the hour. I got to start the show, though, today on just really a rotten note. We're going to talk about 3 football teams that their seasons are already over, and now it's like, what do you do with your quarterbacks? So the Jacksonville Jaguars are 2-7. They have been maybe the most disappointing team in the NFL so far. You also then take a look at the Dallas Cowboys. They are 3-5. And the Miami Dolphins have their quarterback back in Tua Tagovailoa, but they've lost their last 2 games, and the Miami Dolphins are now 2-6 since Tua Tagovailoa has come on back. So there is no optimism, even though there's been a lot of sloppy football this year. There is no optimism or anything that I could say, or maybe if you squint really hard, you could envision a team potentially getting one of those final wild card spots in the AFC or in the NFC to go make a crazy second half of the season type of run, and then you just get in and anything could happen. You know, I'm going to tell you when you're good. I'm going to tell you when you're bad. I'm a very fair radio host, if I may say so myself. But when I look at those 3 teams, here's what's fascinating. And I'll push aside the Dolphins for just a second. But right now, you have Tua Tagovailoa with Miami, and they're struggling. So we'll get into their coaching and GM and quarterback conversation in just a second. But you look at Trevor Lawrence, and you look at Dak Prescott. We don't know when those 2 guys are going to play next. Remember yesterday when I told you it wasn't fair for James Jones, who I happen to like, to say that Dak Prescott quit on the team over a hamstring injury? Because we didn't know the extent of the hamstring injury. And also, we don't even know if he's going on IR yet. We just know he's not going to be playing this upcoming weekend, Sunday, 4:25 p.m. Eastern Time game up against the Philadelphia Eagles. So yesterday after the show, like right when we got off the air, Jane Slater, who does a tremendous job covering the Dallas Cowboys for the NFL Network and also on 105.3 The Fan, she put out this tweet. As the Cowboys weigh in on Dak Prescott's IR status, sources tell me the initial diagnosis is a partial avulsion of his hamstring tendon, which is partially torn off the bone. I'm told it typically takes more than a 4-week recovery. In some cases, they let it scar over, repair, and then strengthen. With that being said, Prescott is seeking other options, which is why there is currently a reluctance to place him on IR or make any determinations about a timeline for return. So the easy thing to do, even though we were ahead of it, is to just trash James Jones today, right? That would be the easy thing. Like, James, you're an idiot. Oh, you're a moron. You're a dope. He's already apologized. Like, he has apologized too much by now. He sent out a tweet. He sent out multiple tweets. They led the show today with it on his show, The Facility, on FS1. So James Jones has already profusely apologized. So I'm not going to sit here and just slam James Jones. I didn't slam him yesterday, but I just thought what he said was ridiculous. But when you look back at it, here you have a guy in Dak Prescott whose hamstring is partially torn off the bone. The team stinks. Heck, he even mouthed it on the sideline. We bleeping suck right now. And this is a guy that's trying to get every opinion possible to delay having some sort of surgery or delay basically him having to go on bare minimum IR, which would knock him out for 4 games when he's already missing the game this week. Like, if Dak Prescott has an intention of coming back this season, you need to figure it out if you're going to go on IR by Sunday. Because you're going to miss Sunday either way. You would want for it to account for one of those games that you have to sit out for the 4 games if you go on IR. But let's just be realistic. And I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to pretend to be a genius on this matter. But if I were to assume, just assume, and you know what happens when you assume? Sometimes you make an ass out of you and me. I would assume that Dak Prescott has played his final game for the Cowboys for this season. Because in all likelihood, Dak is fighting to try to avoid going on IR. With that report that we just read from Jane Slater, I think it's going to be tough for him to skip going on IR. So bare minimum, he's going to be out 4 games. The team is 3-5. And here are their next 4 games. The Eagles, the Texans, the Commanders, and the Giants. So you look at those next 4 games, like you could win the Giant game, and maybe you could find a way to go 2-2 in that 4-game stretch. But in all likelihood, with the Eagles, Texans, and Commanders staring you in the face, and then the Giants, you're going to be going 1-3 in that stretch. So if you go, and I'll do some quick mental math on the air, if you go 2-2 in that stretch, you will be sitting there when you come on back at 5-7. If you go 1-3, you will be sitting there at 4-8. Either way, I know you may not be mathematically eliminated at that point, but it feels like your season is already over, especially with how many holes this roster has. When you lose these next 3 games, or even if you lose 2 out of these next 3 games, the chances of Dak Prescott coming on back with something to play for is really slim to none. And I know Cowboys fans could say, well, he already got his money, so when he's healthy, go play him. But you got to protect your franchise quarterback. Like, if he didn't have his contract, there would be no chance he'd be playing another snap this season. But since he already has his contract, and also with how gloomy and just ominous this injury sounds like, I just ask any Cowboy fan this that wants to see Dak Prescott again this year. What's the point? So, the future of the Cowboys is going to be a fascinating conversation, which I will get to in just a second. But I also look at the Jacksonville Jaguars, and here is the latest from the Jaguars. Jay Gruden, yes, not John, Jay Gruden, the former coach of the Commanders, he tweeted out today, sources say surgery for Trevor. Damn, get well, man. Hope sources were wrong. So Jay Gruden puts that out on the internet. Ian Rappaport responds, no surgery scheduled, Jay. There are several options, immediate and down the road. That's one of them. He's considered day-to-day with the left shoulder, but as he considers these options, Trevor Lawrence will likely not play Sunday. Mac Jones is the backup. And then Pete Prisco, who is a very erudite football mind, he tweeted out, the smartest thing Trevor Lawrence can do is shut it down and wait for Ben Johnson. The offense and staff has impacted that kid in a big way. Shut it down. Who is he, John Taffer? Alrighty, I'm going to shut it down. I'm going in. That's what Pete Prisco sounds like. So I look at the Cowboys and I look at the Jaguars. I think their quarterback's obvious statement of the day. They want to play. But if I am Jerry Jones, if I am Shad Khan, I am pulling my quarterback into a meeting room and I'm saying this, or even into my office. Guys, for the Cowboys, we're 3-5. For the Jaguars, we're 2-7. We want to look out for the best interest of you. So we're going to shut you down. We won't say we're going to shut you down for the rest of the season, but we're both going to put you on IR if you're good with that. And both quarterbacks should say yes, and both quarterbacks shouldn't play another down this year. And both quarterbacks should then ask, well, who's going to be coaching me next year? And what are you going to do to improve the roster? And when I ask that question, I think for both Jerry Jones and Shad Khan, the answer is going to be the same. My first target is going to be Bill Belichick. I think that will be a true statement for Jerry Jones. I think Jerry Jones is going to do everything in his power. He basically already gave you the answer to the test before the season started when he just randomly said, hey, I think I would work really well with Bill Belichick. And then for the Jaguars, I have said for a while I thought Bill Belichick could be a dark horse candidate for the Jacksonville Jaguars. But if it's not Bill, then where do you go? And I have not allowed it to enter my mind yet about Ben Johnson because I have assumed that Ben Johnson's going to be the coach of the Bears, but Adam Schefter kind of pushed back on that notion. And, we'll play that audio in just a second. Actually, Stu, let's play it right now because I think it could factor in and tie into this conversation. This is Adam Schefter on the ESPN earlier this morning. Is Ben Johnson destined for the Bears?
Ben Johnson's going to be very, very selective about the place that he chooses to go if he decides even to leave Detroit.
Good point.
He's going to be very careful. I don't know that he desires to leave that division, to head in the division, to go to a place that you're talking about the dysfunction that has existed within that organization. And let's just say 8 teams have him on their wish list. Doesn't mean he's going to be interviewing with 8 teams. Yeah. I think if Ben Johnson is interviewing with anybody this year, he's interviewing with the intent that he's going to take that job.
Let me just say this about Ben Johnson. He has done an unbelievable job in Detroit. But last year, it was bizarre how everyone thought he was going to the Commanders, and then he basically passed on the job, pulled himself out of the running for any job, and said he's going back to Detroit, where now he has a legitimate chance to win a Super Bowl. But you're an offensive coordinator. And look what you ended up passing up with the Commanders, where Adam Peters is there. They have a new owner in Josh Harris, and then they have the second overall pick in the draft, and they have Jaden Daniels. And that's now a happening destination. So I'm starting to wonder, is Ben Johnson just getting too selective? Like, don't get me wrong, brilliant offensive mind. But how many times have we heard up-and-coming head coach, brilliant offensive coordinator, going to revolutionize football, one of the greatest minds we've ever seen. He's unbelievable. He's outstanding. And then the coach gets to be a head coach and goes from OC to head coach, and it's a disaster. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but there's starting to be like some minor speed bumps that are getting me in the way to being all in on Ben Johnson like everybody else is. So when Pete Prisco throws out Ben Johnson, maybe that is a spot. Because I think every spot is on the table. And it's ultimately going to be in the brain of Ben Johnson, what makes him say, yeah, I want to leave Detroit and go to that destination. And I think Ben Johnson is starting to be a guy that, someone could tell you 2 + 2 = 4, and he'll be like, no. 2 + 2 actually equals 5, Zach. And I have an explanation for that. So I have no clue where Ben Johnson's going to go. I thought it was going to be the Bears. You put a gun to my head, I'll still say the Bears. But the way that Schefter said that, I didn't love it. And hey, if you're Jacksonville, you could go with the legend like Belichick. You could go with someone like Mike Vrabel. You could go with the defensive-minded head coach like a Brian Flores. You don't need to hire an offensive-minded coach. But if Ben Johnson looks at Trevor Lawrence and says, man, this guy has just got terrible coaching. Urban Meyer was a disaster. Doug Peterson, I know he's won a Super Bowl, but him and Press Taylor haven't been able to do a good job consistently with Trevor Lawrence. And some of it's on Trevor and some of it's on the coaching staff. But Ben Johnson could look at Trevor Lawrence and say, the league messed him up. And he could think that he could fix him and could have maybe a top 5 quarterback in the league, even though right now Trevor Lawrence isn't a top 10 quarterback in the league. So I do think all options are on the table for the Jaguars. If you made me guess right now, I think Bill should go to Philadelphia, and I think the Eagles should move on from Sirianni, but I don't know if they would. So I do believe Bill is going to land with the Dallas Cowboys. And then you get to the Miami Dolphins. Because we talked about, Trevor, we talked about Dak as well. And it seems like, or just feels like today, that their seasons are going to be over with their injuries, or they're going to put them on IR and neither are going to return this year, even though none of that's official. That's just me assuming. But then you get to Miami. And I was on 560 WQAM in South Florida yesterday. And I was having a pretty, I don't want to say it was a heated, but it was a passionate discussion with Channing Crowder and Mark Hochman. And Channing's like, they can't just run this back next year. He's like, something's got to change with Tua Tagovailoa, Chris Grier, and Mike McDaniel. And I said to Channing, hey, you're not going to get rid of Tua. You just paid him. And I thought it was a mistake, and I said this at the time, to pay Dak Prescott, Trevor Lawrence, and also Tua, and rush to pay all three, and look at the conversation we're having now. None of those three are even going to come close to sniffing the playoffs this year. The only way they should have paid Dak, the Cowboys, is if it was before free agency. And we talked about why many times on this show, so I'm not going to rehash that again. But when you look at the Dolphins, I think the most pressure should be on Chris Grier. Because Chris Grier has been there for a long time. And he basically laughed at the notion of getting a good backup quarterback in there, and did laugh at the notion of the current state of the offensive line. Laughed and basically spat in the fans' faces. So I would say Chris Grier should be out. But with that being said, I did raise this point. If you get rid of Chris Grier, don't you then have to get kind of rid of Mike McDaniel? Because it doesn't feel like with the season the Dolphins had that Mike McDaniel should get more power. He either gets to pick the GM or, the GM approves of Mike McDaniel. Then it's like a shotgun relationship, which usually does not work. So I don't think they will get rid of Grier. I don't think they will get rid of McDaniel, because I could see Stephen Ross just saying, hey, I'm going to run it back and just blame this year on the 4 games that Tua missed, or however many games Tua missed, because of the concussion. That's what I think the Dolphins will end up doing. But Stephen Ross getting up there in age, Stephen Ross not afraid to swing and try to go reel in, no pun intended, well, I guess pun intended, the big fish. Maybe he would move on from Grier and McDaniel. And I think McDaniel deserves another year. Grier doesn't. But I don't like usually firing the GM, keeping the head coach, or vice versa. But if they do move on from the GM and the coach, then Belichick becomes a fascinating potential destination and a potential coach. Because then you'll need a GM and a coach. Belichick could do both. But then you could also bring in Belichick and one of Belichick's lackeys or friends to basically be the general manager. And imagine Bill in the AFC East, where he can't stand Robert Kraft right now, and you have Belichick trying to bring the Dolphins back to the playoffs, and I think Bill instantly would walk into Miami and make them a playoff team next year. So the Cowboys, the Dolphins, and the Jaguars. The Cowboys will definitely have a new coach next year. The Dallas Cowboys and the Jaguars will both definitely have new head coaches. But then I look at the Dolphins, I lean more that the coach and GM will stay the same, but there's a chance Stephen Ross says, I've seen enough. I'm getting up there in age. I want to win. We got a core right now that should be good enough where we shouldn't have an underwhelming season with or without the quarterback that we've seen this past year. 855-212-4227, 855-212-4227. Do you have a name for the Cowboys, the Jaguars, to potentially be their next head coach? And also, do you think the Dolphins should get rid of Chris Grier and Mike McDaniel? 855-212-4227, 855-212-4227. It is a Thursday. We will do a little paper shredder Thursday when we come on back in 5 minutes.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. 3 minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Welcome back to the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network.
All righty, this is Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. I got my paper shredder here. We'll shred some more teams and eliminate them from the postseason field in just a second. 855-212-4227. 855-212-4227. Let's start things off with our buddy Adrian in Maryland. Yo, Adrian, what's shaking, my man?
Yo, Zach, what's going on there, buddy? Hey, I'm a Cowboys fan, and I like Vrabel coming in here. But the problem is Jerry Jones has this thing so broke, he needs to basically fire himself as being a GM. Because whoever he brings in, he's going to have a say in what they can do and what they can't do. That's what's happened in the past. He's hired his own OCs and all that other stuff. So if a coach comes in, he's got to have not full support, but he's basically got to be able to hire his own coaches without Jerry Jones meddling into this.
Yeah, and I know Will McClay and also Stephen Jones have a huge role in the construction of the roster, but Jerry is obviously the face, and he's obviously an owner that meddles and wants to be making the decisions and wants all the spotlight on him. The only thing is, the only coach I could see Jerry, stepping aside and letting him do his thing is really Bill Belichick. Like what he kind of did with Bill Parcells all those years ago, but that has an expiration because Jerry just can't help himself. So, that's why I think if it's not Bill, that I'm not going to say there won't be a respect level, but there won't be a level of feel from Jerry that he thinks he needs to get out of the way because the guy in his mind, right, he's a Hall of Famer. He views himself as one of the greatest owners ever, even though he has not found a way to be in a Super Bowl and NFC title game since the 1995 season. So if it's not Bill, then the question of who's coaching the Cowboys is fascinating because I don't know if there's going to be a lot of the hot commodity kind of candidates that would want to go to Jerry's world.
Zach, but the only problem with I understand bringing in Bill Belichick. I know that's what Jerry Jones is saying. He's bringing him in just so Bill can get that record. All the spotlight can be on Dallas. He can sell all these tickets and all this other stuff.
He's a drama whore, Jerry Jones. We know that. He does what's best for drama.
Yeah, it's going to be another circus. Let me get on to, can I say something about Trevor Lawrence real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Remember Trevor Lawrence, everybody said, Urban Meyer broke him. And then when Peterson got him, his first year he did well, and everybody said he was back. But I actually think it's Trevor Lawrence. I don't think the coach is going to be able to fix this guy. I think he's gone. That game against the Eagles, all he had to do was lay it up. They would have won that game. He threw a straight line to the receiver. It was a linebacker covering.
Yeah, N'Kobe
the back. So if you lob it up, you give him a chance to make that catch and score the touchdown, and they win the game. But I think he's just basically broke.
Yeah, no, it's a fair point, and I could argue it after, right, Urban Meyer, where I was like, hey, it was Urban Meyer was a bleep show. You got to give him a legit coach, an offensive-minded coach to kind of get him back to the quarterback that we all think he could be. I know Doug Peterson, for some reason, doesn't resonate with a lot of people. The guy won a Super Bowl in Philadelphia, won a Super Bowl without his starting quarterback, made Nick Foles look great, and also made Carson Wentz look great. Carson Wentz was going to be the MVP of the league before suffering that injury. And I don't think Press Taylor is right for Trevor Lawrence, but once you brought in the right head coach and it hasn't worked, I can't sit here and say Trevor will definitely be great in this league. I don't know if he can now. So you could still see some things that you go, okay, he's had to deal with some injuries, but there's also been a lot of bad decisions by Trevor Lawrence. I don't think he is fully broken. I think you could salvage him. I still think he could be a good quarterback, but I can't sit here and expect that it will definitely happen because now this has been one bad regime and a second regime that you could have some gripes with. But now it's been, okay, Doug was supposed to be the guy. Everyone loved that hire. And now we're all talking about who's going to be the next guy that comes on in. So this is it for Trevor. He just got paid. And he's not going anywhere anytime soon, even though those relationships could deteriorate very quickly. However, with that being said, it's one of those scenarios where it feels like that career is on life support, even though he's still going to be kicking and he's still going to be playing. And we'll see if the next coach could salvage the deal. Alrighty, let me get my construction workers cap on. I'm always skeptical with these because it's a little loosey-goosey. So I think it fit on the cabeza this week. I look a little bit like Jimmy Neutron. Or who's the guy? The Great Kazoo, I believe it was. So the teams that we have already eliminated so far from playoff contention on Paper Shredder Thursday. The Jets, out. Not going to make the playoffs. I don't care that they won one lousy game against the Texans. The Patriots, out. The Giants, out. Deshaun Watson and the Cleveland Browns, out. Will Levis, Mason Rudolph, whoever you want to throw out there with Tennessee, out. Jacksonville, out. Panthers, out. Saints, we were ahead of the game with them. They just fired their coach, Dennis Allen, out. And then last week, Stu gave up his Raiders fandom by shredding the logo of the Las Vegas Raiders, so the Raiders out. The only division that we have not shredded one team from is the NFC West. 49ers, Cardinals, Rams, Seahawks, we have not shredded them from getting eliminated from playoff contention. So now, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 logos in front of me. First up, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. In a weird way, I don't think the Bucs are a great team, but I like watching the Tampa Bay Buccaneers play because of the toughness that Baker Mayfield does display. Now, it would be nice if the energy and the toughness that Baker Mayfield brings, that Todd Bowles would match that. Now, their season, it's getting a little dicey because they've already lost 2 games to the Falcons. The Falcons are 6-3. I only see one team getting on in from the NFC South, and Tampa Bay is 4-5. But for now, I'm going to hold off on shredding the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So we will keep them safe for another week or two. Miami has the Dolphins. They are not the greatest football team. They don't move the ball from goal to goal. And right now, they don't go marching 1, 2, 3. And when we're talking Miami, we're not talking Super Bowl right now. I know Tua has been back. They've lost both games that Tua has been back in, to the Cardinals and to the Bills in heartbreaking fashion. Maybe they could have saved the season if they would have won one of those games, but this is a 2-6 football team. And I've already seen enough 8 games into the season. We will now see if Mike McDaniel and Chris Greer will be back next year. But the Miami Dolphins, they are getting shredded. Next up, the Bears. Now, here's the crazy part about the Bears. The Bears are right in the mix of the NFC wild card hunt. I got to be very careful when I say that because one legendary sports talk show host may have said that a little bit too quickly. And he said a word that if you say that word to a woman, she has every right to smack you across the face. But I've seen enough with the Bears. I picked the Bears to be a playoff team before the season started. I know they're 500. I know they're right there at 4-4. But right now, they have an enormous, and I mean an enormous coaching problem. And how they lost those games the last 2 weeks, right? You lose in heartbreaking fashion up against the Commanders on the Hail Mary, where you have Stevenson celebrating. And even when you tried to give him some repercussions, he tried to dictate what the punishments were going to be. But now, you follow that up getting blown out by the Cardinals. I know they play the Patriots this week. I know they could win that game. But even if they win that game, their next 3 are up against the Packers, Vikings, Lions. And then, even if they survive that stretch, they end the season 49ers, Vikings, Lions, Seahawks, and the Packers. I'm just not trusting this coaching staff. So, with that being said, this may be premature. We may have to reverse shred in a few weeks from now and try to have the Bears come back up, but I don't think that's going to happen because Eberflus is Eberlose, and they lose a lot of games with the Bears head coach. So throw the Bears in the paper shredder. All righty. We got a few more teams to get to right here. The next team on my list, the Indianapolis Colts. I don't believe in the Indianapolis Colts. They are 4-5, but their division is problematic. And the Houston Texans, I know that they're going to win this division. They're 6-3, but what happens if an injury occurs? Then, like, Indianapolis is right alive. So I take a look at Indianapolis. They probably lose to the Bills this week, and that's probably it for their season. Joe Flacco didn't give them that boost that they thought they were going to because Brian Flores is an aggressive defensive coordinator and Joe Flacco has no mobility. I'm thinking about putting the Colts in the paper shredder, but I want to see what they could do the next 2 weeks against the Bills and the Jets. So for now, I will not shred the Indianapolis Colts. Alrighty. Let's get to the Denver Broncos. This is a team that before the season started, I could never see them making the playoffs. I wasn't a believer in the quarterback, and I also am not a believer in Sean Payton as an NFL head coach in the year of 2024. Sean's showing this year that he's still a damn good coach. Bo Nix, they got blown out by the Ravens, but that was like a dud moment for them. After the touchdown catch, it just went all the way down the drain. They're 5-4. I think Denver's going to start to go on a little bit of a stretch where it's like, they start to not play as well as they've been. Like, they play the Chiefs, they play the Falcons. They probably should lose these next 2 games. You know, they could beat the Raiders and they should beat the Browns. So this team's going to be back and forth. I think they're going to be, I know you can't beat 500, but I think they'll be like either 8 or 9 or 9-8. So that to me is a team, if they go 9-8, they could still be in it. So I will not shred the Denver Broncos. All righty. We got one more team. The drama Dallas choking Cowboys. And when we look at the drama Dallas choking Cowboys, this is a football team that they're 3-5. And in all likelihood, even though it's not official, Dak Prescott has probably played his final snap of the season. And the Dallas Cowboys this week, even with Cooper Rush at quarterback, and I know Cooper Rush was great a few years ago when he had to play for an injured Dak Prescott, I think the Eagles are going to spank them. And you look at the next 3 games for the Dallas Cowboys, they play the Eagles, they play the Texans, and they play the Commanders. So, the Dallas Cowboys are going in the paper shredder. Alrighty, that's Paper Shredder Thursday on the Zach Gelb Show. Standing by with the latest Infinity Sports Network Sports Flash. Here he is, the Act Man, Rich Ackerman.
Infinity Sports Network Sports Flash.
And it's brought to you by Progressive, who's proud to support veterans and small businesses with their annual Keys to Progress vehicle giveaway program, helping our heroes drive their lives forward. Learn more at keystoprogress.com. Billy Napier is 15-17 in his time at Florida. The Gators are 4-4 this year, but AD Scott Strickland gave his embattled coach a vote of confidence, saying they need a disciplined and stable approach. The Ravens host the Bengals to open Week 10. Baltimore has bounced back nicely from an 0-2 start with wins in 6 of 7 and sits just a half game behind the Steelers in the AFC North. Cincinnati also got off to a slow start, but has come on since dropping the previous meeting in overtime. Zach Taylor's team has gone 3-1 since, and the Bengals coach is looking to keep hope alive.
I think we always have great hope. I think this team believes that whoever walks on the field against us, we have a tremendous opportunity to find a way to win. These divisional games, again, it's always stated when you play these games, we know them well, they know us well. It was a great game. The last time we played them, we came up short, and excited for the opportunity to get another crack at them in third place.
The Panthers have come to terms with Chuba Hubbard on a 4-year extension worth a total of $33 million. And as Joel Embiid is set to return, the Sixers will now be without Tyrese Maxey for several weeks due to a hamstring injury. I'm Rich Ackerman. You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. 2 minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
You're listening to the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network.
You know, I've been getting some tweets about Paper Shredder Thursday and also some YouTube comments as well. Bella B says, this is oddly satisfying. Hashtag Thursday vibes. She was in her car getting her car washed, and you hear the paper shredder, and then you hear the sound effects from the car wash as well. So I thought that was funny. Gary Thomas says, I enjoy Paper Shredder Thursday, but how about doing some coaches that could use the shredder as well? It's actually not a bad idea. We could throw some coaches in the Paper Shredder as well. And then also, I did see in the YouTube chat that John Elliott says, where's the yellow safety vest? That's actually not a bad idea. Now, if engineering would lend a helping hand to us from time to time, and they do with the big construction workers hat, but I asked them for like some safety goggles. They said they didn't have it. You know, we're not a wardrobe center. Also, you know, maybe I'll go buy. I could purchase some safety goggles, and then maybe we go get a yellow vest. But here's the dilemma that I'm realizing with Paper Shredder Thursday, if I'm just being honest. And I like the segment, right? You know, it's a good idea. Originally, we were going to do shredding teams for the Super Bowl, to win the Super Bowl. And then it was Stu's idea, maybe we just do playoffs. And I go, okay, that's fine. You know, I'm all good for hearing an idea. Here is the thing, though. We are getting to a point where we have shredded enough teams now. The Dolphins, the Jets, the Pats, the Cowboys, the Giants, the Browns, the Bears, the Jaguars, the Titans, the Panthers, the Saints, and the Raiders. So we've shredded 12 teams. Not half the league, but close to half the teams in the league. Like the next few weeks, we may not have Paper Shredder Thursday. We may not have Paper Shredder Thursday until Thanksgiving, or maybe even the week after Thanksgiving. Because I can't see anything happening in the next 2 weeks where I'm shredding the Bills, where I'm shredding the Commanders, where I'm shredding the Eagles, where I'm shredding the Bengals, where I'm shredding the Ravens, the Steelers, maybe the Bengals, potentially the Bengals. Lions, no. Packers, no. Vikings, no. Texans, no. Colts, yes. Bucks, potentially. Falcons, no. Chargers, no. Chiefs, no. Broncos, no. 49ers, Cardinals, Rams, Seahawks, no. So maybe we will find something in between to shred. And we could do multiple things, like terrible Thanksgiving food items. Turkey. We could shred turkey on the show. And we could just advocate why my family and us being a smart family are all in on lasagna for Thanksgiving. And we're having a big Gelb family Thanksgiving this year in honor of my grandmother. And I have taken the captaincy of leading this whole charge for Thanksgiving. And we got a kick-ass menu. And we do Thanksgiving early because we did it for my grandma and my grandpa like early. They always want to do it early. And my grandpa, fortunately, is still around. So we will be doing it early once again. So when you do like Thanksgiving at 1 o'clock, by 3:34, I know what it's like to be old because I have a slumber. Or like a toddler. I'm having a little nap on the couch. Not only a nap, like a coma. I remember there was one year a few years ago. I forget who the Cowboys were playing on Thanksgiving Day. It may have been the Commanders. And they lost. And I thought I had to give like an instant reaction video. And at the time, like later that night, I was going out with, at my time, a girlfriend. And I was doing like a take on a Thursday night after already going through my Thanksgiving feast, knowing I had to go out to someone else's Thanksgiving, going out, somewhere else afterwards. And I had like a blanket over my head, just still stuffed because I was in a food coma. So you know what? This year, I'm not going to say I'm going to eliminate Thanksgiving content from my social media feeds because I won't do that. You know, I will post my food. I will post my glorious lasagna and cookie cake, which is an icebox cake. I will post all of that. But in terms of sports takes, I'm not saying I'm definitely going to do this. But I may take one day off from giving any sports take on social media. But here's the problem. You watch like football during Thanksgiving. That's why I love Thanksgiving. It's my favorite holiday. Because it's food, it's family, and it's football. Those are the three foundations, the three principles of my life. Food, family, football. Now, how do you order those? That's the question. Stu, I'm going to ask you. You seem like a nice family member. Food, family, football. 1, 2, 3. 1 being the most important, 3 being the least important. What would you do?
I would say family.
Soccer.
Oh, this is tough. Family. I'll say food, football, but it's a close.
If I'm going to be honest.
Uh-oh.
And my mom is listening right now because she just texted me that she is in the car driving home from the airport. She was in Florida visiting her mother. So I got to be very careful. And I got to tiptoe a line here. So, Stu, what was the question? 1, 2, and 3? Food, family,
food,
football?
Family,
how
football.
I would order it?
Yes.
Food, football, family. I'm serious. You know, family could annoy you. Food doesn't annoy you. Football can't annoy you, but you know what you're signing up for. Family, you don't always know what you're signing up for. Oh, my God. There's not even a delay wherever my mom's listening to it right now. I kid you not. I just got a text from my mother, from Mama Gelb. Family comes first. So I guess I am in like the family doghouse, but I'm being honest. You know, I've never had a piece of lasagna talk back to me. I've had football players talk back to me, but I've enjoyed those conversations. There's some family members that, let's be real, you know, they could be a pain in the ass and they know they're being a pain in the ass. I don't know where my mom is. She must be listening on Sirius because she's like getting the feed right away. Or maybe she's listening on a local affiliate. My mom just texted me, good point on the family stuff. So yeah, I would rank it, and I don't think I'm being crazy in this. If you want my honest opinion, that's why you listen to this show. There is no doubt about it. It is food, it is football, and then it's family. Okay. I think I'm out of the doghouse with my mother. Because she just wrote, you're the best part of our family. I'm Switzerland in this family. Everyone likes me. I'm right in the middle. I just try to make everyone feel good in our family. All righty. tonight, we do got the Bengals and we do got the Ravens. But first, I got to tell you about the dependable player of the week. It sounds like I brought the paper shredder out as I'm flipping through these pages once again, and it hit my computer charging cord. The dependable player of the week is sponsored by Depend and the Prostate Cancer Foundation, reminding you that health is a long game and screening for prostate cancer is easier than ever. Learn more at Depend.com. This week's player is Ravens quarterback Lamar Jackson. Lamar is currently third in the NFL passing yards and has 20 passing touchdowns to just 2 interceptions on the season. So Lamar Jackson is a dependable player of the week. Tonight, Bengals, Ravens. They're like, the pressure to me is all on Cincinnati tonight. Cincinnati has not had a moment this year where they have showed us in terms of proving it on the field, not just reputation, not just what people expect, that they look like a bona fide Super Bowl contender or even a playoff team. Like, their best moment of the season was a loss to the Kansas City Chiefs, where they lost by 1. Like, you look and examine their 4 wins. They beat the Panthers, so what? You beat the Giants, so what? You beat the Browns, so what? And you beat the Raiders. If you can't beat the Raiders, I would say you stink, but the Ravens lost to the Raiders. So if you can't beat the Raiders, it's either, you stink, or you did something wrong that allowed the Raiders to win, which is what the Ravens did. The Ravens snatched defeat from the jaws of victory when they choked that game away up against the Las Vegas Raiders. But tonight, this is the last moment that I will give the Cincinnati Bengals. If you want me to believe in you, then you got to prove it and you got to get to 5-5. Because if this team gets to 4-6 after tonight, and you look at their schedule the rest of the way, Chargers, Steelers, Cowboys, Titans, Browns, Broncos, Steelers, not an impossible schedule, if we're being honest. But if they get to 4-6, I just can't believe that this team is going to go where people think they're going to go. But if they win tonight and they get to 5-5, you look at that schedule once again. Chargers, tough. Steelers, tough. Cowboys, who even knows who's going to be their quarterback. Titans stink. Browns stink. Broncos, solid. Steelers, a tough team, but you don't fear their offense. It's like one of those spots where you win tonight, then I start to give you the benefit of the doubt again and start to buy back in and start to say, okay, now I'm putting the Bengals back in the hopper of teams that I could anticipate getting into the postseason. And if the Bengals just get into the postseason, no one is going to want to face Cincinnati, because even though Hendrickson leads the league in sacks, their defense has been problematic and not a good way. But offensively, you got Burrow. When healthy, you got Chase and you got Higgins. And you look at that squad, we know Burrow has been the only quarterback outside of Tom Brady, so only active quarterback right now, that has been able to get the job done when it matters up against Patrick Mahomes. All right, it is the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. We will take a break. When we come on back in 5 minutes, joining us, the head football coach at South Carolina, friend of the program, Shane Beamer, off his big program-changing victory, in my opinion, up against A&M, where they blanked them in the second half, 24-0. We'll talk about that game and also their upcoming game with Coach Shane Beamer next.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. 3 minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Infinity and beyond.
He's live. He's nationwide. This is the Zach Gelb Show.
Alrighty, welcome back in hour number 2 of our radio program. It is the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. Really happy for Shane Beamer at South Carolina. What a wonderful weekend it was for that program, and a great victory up against, at the time, top 10 Texas A&M. The game was tied right at halftime, and then in the second half, they dominated A&M, outscoring them 24-0 to get a 24-point victory. Final score was South Carolina 44, A&M 20, and now we know South Carolina turns their attention to their game this upcoming weekend up against a very tough and fun Vanderbilt team. And now joining us is the coach of South Carolina, and that's Shane Beamer. Coach, first off, congratulations. Appreciate the time. Thanks so much for doing this. How you been?
I've been great. Appreciate you saying that. And it was a great weekend, and thanks for having me on today.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you coming on. So you guys got off to a really good start. We've seen you before in these games this year. Get out hot. You're up 17-6. Then you allow back-to-back touchdowns. And right before the half, I thought getting that field goal just to walk into the locker room tied was enormous for your football team. How big, looking back at it, was the field goal right before the end of halftime?
Yeah, that's a great point. And that's what one of the things I was really, really proud of the other night was just our response when A&M responded, which we knew they would. We got off to a great start. They came back. They took the lead. And then for us to be able to execute a 2-minute drive down the field and get points right there was huge. And it was just to tie it up, but it was just enough momentum to finish the half, and it allowed us to go in there and as coaches talk about, look, we're in a tie ball game versus a top 10 team that's undefeated in the SEC. What more do you want? It's all right here in front of us. But absolutely, that drive and then the field goal were really big.
You know, I was sitting there, I was watching the game with a fat Italian sandwich, and I may have had a cocktail or two. And I'm thinking when you walk into the locker room at halftime, with seeing your team play quite a few times this year and how it just hasn't gone right for you guys in these big games, I'm like, Shane Beamer's just got to give this electric speech. You know, was it calm in that locker room like you were talking about, or were you a little fired up when talking to the squad?
I'd say it was a little bit of both. As soon as we came off the field, I grabbed him, and usually I say something to him right before we go back out on the field. But in that instance, I just walked right in the locker room before I got with the offense and the defensive coaches, and really just told them what I just said. That look, guys, it's what more could you want? We're at home. It's a tie ball game. They've responded, we've responded, told you guys it was going to be a heavyweight fight, and that's what it is. And we'll find out a lot about our team here in the second half, but making sure they also understood that, give Texas A&M credit, but we had, at that point, we had given up a long touchdown run because we were misaligned on defense and gave up a long touchdown run. We had some mistakes on offense that affected us. So really it was more, let's get ourselves corrected and fixed here at the half. And then when we come out here in the second half, we've been talking all week that this is a identity type game, and we're going to find out a lot about ourselves and our team and our program here in the next 30 minutes.
And then your team was able to outscore A&M in the second half 24-0. If I would have told you that walking out of the locker room to go play the next 30 minutes that you would blank them in the second half and you guys would put up 24 points, what would you have said to me in the moment?
I was just hoping to score 24 in the game against that defense. They're so good. But in all seriousness, I would have told you that I would think it was possible that we were at home and our home crowd, the energy and the momentum that they create, certainly we can get on a roll with anyone. And our offense had shown some signs of really being productive that night at the half, and we were doing some great things at halftime. We really were running the ball, throwing the ball. I don't think we had a penalty in the first half. So I knew that if we continued to do those things and we were able to get some turnovers, that was going to be huge. And that was one thing I said at halftime, too. I think from a turnover standpoint, at halftime, they had not turned the ball over at all, and we had turned it over one time. And we had talked a lot going into the week that we are going to have to get some takeaways in this game. A&M's too good on defense, and they're operating at a high level offensively. So I challenged our guys, we got to go get some takeaways because right now we're losing that battle 1-0. So if you had told me that we would get 2 takeaways in the second half in our own territory, stop them on another 4th and 1, and continue to be efficient, I would say that there's a chance. But our guys played really, really great in the second half. There's no question about it, against a really good team and really physical team that prides themselves on getting better as the game goes.
You know the conversation heading into a season like this. Some people are out on you, some people are out on your program. And a lot of those times you're in a lot of those games this year and they just haven't gone your way. For it to go right, for you to get that victory, now sit at 5-3, you just beat a top 10 team. I called it a program-changing win for your squad. Just how do you kind of look at what that win means now moving forward for A&M, for South Carolina?
Yeah, obviously, we can't be, we're not talking about A&M after we got back to work this week. We've got another big challenge in Nashville this Saturday, but I'm not dumb. I also realize the impact that Wynn had in a lot of ways on the field, as a program, off the field from a recruiting standpoint, the people that were at that game or watched that game on television. So it was, we'll be feeling the impact of that game for many, many years. There's no question about it. And in the short term, really, I didn't really think so much about the impact of what it meant in the moment. It was really, for me, just happy for, for all of our players, but really happy just for our, older guys. We've got a lot of guys. I think we're at 13 players that have been here since 2020, and that's the year before I got here. And then a lot of guys that have been here with me since I became the head coach before the 21 season. So they could have easily bolted after last season. Last year was tough, just the adversity we faced with injuries and not having the record that we wanted. Human nature is to take the easy way out and move on, and these guys doubled down on this place and what this place is about, and have been on a mission since January to have nights like we had last Saturday. So I was just really happy for them.
Yeah, I want to talk about your quarterback. I also want to talk about Vanderbilt. We'll get to them in just a second, Shane Beamer. But after the game, Coach, I didn't know you had that Riz in you. That was really impressive, getting the whole team to serenade your wife on her birthday and sing a little Fantasia When I See You. How'd you come up with that one, Coach?
Yeah, that was cool. I had to look up what the word Riz means because I heard that as well, and I wasn't sure. I was like, I hope that's a good thing. We play some music, or we play music at times during our practices, just at the beginning when we're stretching and early on during individual and things like that. And so last year, I started hearing that song, and I'll be honest with you, I knew it, but I really wasn't familiar with it. But when it would play at practice, I mean, our players, they would sing, some of them I'd see them over there dancing. It was, I could tell they liked that song. So it just continued to play. And then I'd start listening to the words, and it just kind of hit me that, earlier in the week, I was like, it'd be cool. My wife's birthday, it's actually today, but I was like, my wife's birthday is coming up. If we win the game, that would be fun in the locker room. And I told the guys, I need you to have my back, just because we needed to create a vibe in there for sure. It didn't need to be me just singing and nobody else doing anything. And they answered the call. The players did as well, and was a really cool moment. And I had no idea that it would be as widespread and viral and impactful as it's been. It's been pretty cool, especially from a recruiting standpoint.
Yeah, well, the video did like 4 or 5 million views, I think, the last time I checked a few days ago. And didn't Fantasia send you flowers herself?
Yeah, she did. She sent flowers, and she sent a video to me as well. She's been super sweet about that, and really, really cool. So fun moment, and that's what it's all about. You work really, really hard during the week to have locker room celebrations like that as well, and really, really just a really cool moment.
Well, now you're screwed moving forward, Coach. Like, how do you top next year's birthday? Like, seriously.
Yeah, I know. I've heard from so many husbands across the world that I know that have texted me to say that I've ruined it for all husbands across America, because nobody can compare to that one. Those texts are still coming in today, as a matter of fact.
That's unbelievable. Your quarterback, Lenoris Sellers, he is exciting. We saw what he did throwing the ball, 244 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, and on the ground, we know what he could do as well. 15 carries for 106 yards and another touchdown. Take me through who your quarterback is if people don't know much about him or have elected to doubt your quarterback through this last year.
Yeah, I think he's a guy that just continues to get better. Very poised, very confident. People forget that obviously he was a very inexperienced quarterback coming into the season. He was a redshirt freshman, and then you go into his redshirt freshman season, and he plays the first game against Old Dominion. There's a period of the Kentucky game, week 2, where he got knocked out with an injury. He came back in return. Game 3 was LSU. He didn't play the second half because of injury. Game 4 was Akron. He didn't play at all because of an injury. And then he came back in game 5 against Ole Miss. So, Ole Miss, then Alabama, then Oklahoma. those were only up until last week. He'd only played in 3 complete SEC games. So he's a guy that each of those games you saw him getting better as he got more and more experience. And he's a great young man, 240 pounds, can run, continues to improve as a quarterback, and great leader, and just a really, really he's got the DNA of what you want at your quarterback position. There's no question about it.
Yeah, what would you say is his ceiling? Like, if everything goes right for him and he keeps on putting up the performances like he did up against A&M moving forward and gets better with just more and more reps, what can he be moving forward for your program?
Yeah, I think he can be as good as he wants to be, and the sky's the limit for him. He can make all the throws. He can run. He can make people miss. He can break tackles. He's intelligent. He works really hard. He's a football junkie. I know this. I'm glad he's ours. That's for sure.
All right, let me get to Vanderbilt. Clark Lee has done an incredible job this year, right? Everyone had his program looking for a new coach at the end of the season. Everyone thought he was going to be done at some point this season. He's had a big victory up against Alabama. That team is as tough, one of the toughest teams I've seen play this year. Just how about what's impressed you with what coach has been able to do this year, getting ready to prepare for them?
Yeah, I got a lot of respect for him. Clark and I were both hired as head coaches in the SEC at the same time, same year. So somebody that I think a lot of personally and professionally, and he's done a great job. People forget he had some wins before this year that were very big wins, beating Kentucky, beating Florida, and whatnot, and then obviously what he's done this season. But they're doing a great job. They obviously have bought into everything that they're doing. And then as a team, they're doing the things that you have to do to win football games. They're leading the SEC in time of possession. They're the least penalized team in the SEC. I think they're second in turnover margin. So they're not turning the ball over. They're not beating themselves with penalties. They're finding ways to just get the game to the fourth quarter by controlling the ball. And then they've got great confidence in what they're doing right now, and they're really hard to beat. I think they've got 3 losses this year by a total of 10 points, and just doing a really good job, and they certainly have our respect.
And the quarterback doesn't take no for an answer, Diego Pavia, and he has a lot of energy, clearly, and he's a tremendous leader. When I kind of view you as a coach, or you see being a leader, you see a lot of energy. I'm not saying you see yourself in Diego, but even though it's going to be a tough matchup for you guys this week, it has to be a player you have a lot of respect for.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Got a ton of respect for the way he plays the game. That his energy fuels that Vanderbilt team. You can tell it's his team, and they rally around him, and it's been really fun to watch. He's a competitor. He's tough. He can run. He can make throws. He's a gamer, and it's been really cool to watch him play this season. And I've got a ton of respect for him.
Last thing I'll ask you, Coach Shane Beamer. We talk about the moment with your wife after the game. I also saw your dad was on the sideline, which was pretty cool as well. Just how about that family atmosphere that you've kind of, really have implemented at South Carolina?
Yeah, it's what it's all about. I was very fortunate growing up, the son of a coach, to be able to, experience really cool moments with my dad, whether it be on the big stage at Virginia Tech or even on the smaller stage when he was the head coach at Murray State. All those memories that I had, and to be able to do it now with my family, not just my family, but our coaches, wives and kids. It's what it's all about. And there's a lot of sacrifices that we have to make as coaches because of our job, time away from our family and things like that. So to be able to include our families in what we're doing and be able to include them in special moments like we had the other day is something I'm really grateful to be able to do.
Well, Coach, heck of a moment. Good luck this weekend. We appreciate the time. Thanks for it.
You got it. Thanks for having me on.
There you go. Shane Beamer joining us on the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. Always enjoy when he spends a few minutes with us. All righty, we'll take a break, 15 after the hour. When we come on back, we're going to do a middle-of-the-year look back at my preseason predictions in the NFL. Awards, Super Bowl picks, how many will we keep the same, and then how many will we end up changing? We'll do that on the other side.
You're in a 5-minute break. 4 minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. .45 seconds remaining. .30 seconds remaining. .15 seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Welcome back to the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network.
All right, it is the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. So before the season did commence, I picked all 7 AFC and NFC playoff teams. I then gave you an MVP, a comeback player of the year, a coach of the year, an offensive player of the year, a defensive player of the year, an offensive rookie of the year, a defensive rookie of the year, and then I gave you a Super Bowl prediction. So Stuart Kovacs has found the way to compile a little list of those old predictions. He went back into the archives, and he probably saw some of those picks, and he was like, oh, God, those are stinky. And then some other ones, he was like, those are pretty good. So, Stu, let's start with the division winners. Let's start in the AFC. Who do I have winning the AFCs?
All right, AFC East, you had the Buffalo Bills.
And that's one that I feel great about. They are 7-2. The Jets are 3-6. The Dolphins are 2-6. The Patriots are 2-7. I will keep that prediction of the Buffalo Bills winning the AFC East.
Okay, in the AFC North, you had the Cincinnati Bengals.
I'm going to change that. And I'm going to say that the Baltimore Ravens end up winning that division. Not the Pittsburgh Steelers, but the Baltimore Ravens.
All right, AFC South, you had the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Did you read that wrong?
Unfortunately, no, I did not.
Yeah, I'm going to change that. And I will go with the Houston Texans. That was my worst preseason prediction. Because if I recall, we'll get to the coach of the year later. That is synonymous with that prediction. I would say those are my 2 worst predictions. But we'll just go in order here. I will change that to the Texans.
All right, and then in the West, you had the Chiefs.
I'm going to keep that. I feel pretty good the Chiefs are going to win the AFC West. Okay. How about the wildcard teams?
All right, wildcard teams. First one you had is Baltimore Ravens.
Obviously, I have the Ravens now winning the North, so I will swap out the Ravens. Give me the other 2 teams that I put in there in the wildcard.
And you had the New York Jets and the Houston Texans.
So I did have the Texans making the playoffs, just not winning the division. So I have to eliminate the Ravens and the Texans from the wildcard because I haven't winning the division. I will replace them with the Steelers. I will also... I will put in the... going to hold off on the Chargers. I'm going to say the Bengals win tonight. And then the last team I had was who? Was it the Jets, you said?
The New York Jets, yeah.
Okay. Hey. You know what? And I'm going to get dragged for this on social media at one point. Except on Elon Musk's Twitter, I feel like it's tougher to find your older tweets now. But I did have a tweet when Justin Herbert got injured, how they shouldn't rush him back. Even though I love Harbaugh, it's kind of like a wash season anyway. But I will say that the toughness of that offensive line and also the coaching of Jim Harbaugh will put the Chargers in the playoffs. So that means Bills, Ravens, Texans, Chiefs, your division winners. Steelers, Chargers, Bengals as your wild card team. So those would be your 7 playoff teams. So no Broncos, no Colts, and obviously no Jets or Dolphins going on some magical run. You know, it feels like those will be the 7 playoff teams. Okay. How about the NFC?
All right, NFC East, you had the Eagles.
This is tough. Because the Commanders are 7-2. You know what? I have to call a friend, and that friend is Google. I'm not even going to look at the Commanders' second half of the season schedule. I'm just looking at the Eagles. Beat the Cowboys, play the Commanders, Rams, Ravens, tough. Then they finish the season, Carolina, Pittsburgh, Washington, Dallas, New York. You know what? I'm going to change that. Commanders. Commanders going to win the division. Okay?
All
Next.
right. In the North, you had the Lions.
I will keep the Detroit Lions. Easily.
Okay. In the NFC West, you had the 49ers.
Oh, boy. You know what? Something's up with the Niners. You know, I know they're getting healthier. I just don't feel like there's a drive there right now. But do I trust any of the other 3 teams? Seahawks, Cardinals, like I'm not all in. You know what? I'm going to say the Rams win that division. I'm going to change that. Even though the Rams have a lot of injuries, I will put the Rams winning the NFC West. Okay?
And then finally, NFC South, you have the Falcons.
I will keep the Atlanta Falcons. So who are my wild card teams? I know I had the Rams in there because I had them winning the Super Bowl.
Yes, Rams, Packers, and Bears.
So I will keep the Packers. I will take out the Rams. I will take out the Bears. I will put the Vikings in the postseason. And then it's a choice between Philly and the Niners. You know what? Bleep it. Let's have a little fun. Eagles in. Niners out. I think only one team from the NFC West is going to get in. Now, the Niners can still win that division. But for the sake of this exercise, I'm going to say the Niners. I'm going to bet against them. So my 7 playoff teams then from the NFC would be the Commanders, Lions, Rams, Falcons, Eagles, Packers, Vikings. Okay? You want to go to the awards?
Yes, so MVP you had Josh Allen.
So that race to me, even though I would kind of wish that Derrick Henry would get some more play, I do think it's between Josh Allen and I do think it's Lamar Jackson. I will keep that, and I will go with Josh Allen. So I'll keep that.
All right, comeback player of the year, Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, he ain't going to win that award. So I would say it's Sam Darnold, but here's the thing. They tell you now not to vote just because like a player wasn't playing or was benched or just wasn't successful. You got to have like overcome some adversity and some injury. So you know who I'm going to change it to? Kirk Cousins. You know, Kirk Cousins, we talked about the other day. I don't think he wins the MVP, but there's like an outside chance for Kirk Cousins to have an MVP coming up that Achilles injury, and he's going to win that division. I'll say it's Kirk Cousins.
All right, so...
You want to whisper this one?
Yeah, Coach of the Year, Doug Peterson.
What was that?
Doug Peterson.
That was bad. He's going to get fired.
Not Coach of the Year.
Yeah, he's not Coach of the Year. I will change the Coach of the Year to Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn, Coach of the Year. Okay?
All right, Offensive Player of the Year, Bijan Robinson.
Derrick Henry. That's all I'll change it to.
Okay, Defensive Player of the Year, TJ Watt.
Can I ask you a question here?
Sure.
Do you know what the TJ stands for?
I have no idea. It'd be a total guess.
I'm not going to lie. I have never seen someone spell out what the T is for and the J is for when it comes for TJ Watt. Until the other day when I was like, let me see the Defensive Player of the Year award odds. And I saw it listed as Trent Jordan Watt. And for a second, I'm like, who the heck is Trent Jordan? I'm like, that's a defensive player. I don't know who he is. And I just didn't see the Watt part. I thought it was / Watt, but it's Trent Jordan Watt. So I will keep that. TJ Watt is the best defensive player in the NFL.
All right, so for Offensive Rookie of the Year, you had Caleb Williams.
And you know what? I was a coward with this pick. I really was. Because I remember saying, I want to go Jaden Daniels, but I think the Bears are going to make the playoffs. I don't believe the Commanders. I think they could be like fine, but I don't think they're going to be a playoff team. I think I called them a dark horse team to make the playoffs for the year started, but I wasn't thinking they were actually going to make it. It's clearly changed. You know, Caleb Williams ain't going to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. It's Jaden Daniels.
And then for Defensive Rookie of the Year, you had Jared Verse.
That's my best preseason prediction. Let me tell you. He is the favorite right now to win Defensive Rookie of the Year. Out of all these predictions that I made, like the one I think I've been most vocal about was Josh Allen winning the MVP, but I don't think that really took a lot. I just think people were so down on the Bills entering this year that it was just an easy overachieved spot, and the Jets and the Dolphins wouldn't be what people thought the Jets and the Dolphins would be. But as long as he wins it, right? He's still got some games left. But right now, as we enter Week 10, he is the odds-on favorite to win Defensive Rookie of the Year, Jared Verse. I will keep that. That's the one I'm most proud of. Okay, and what was the Super Bowl pick?
Yeah, speaking of the Rams, you have the Rams 24 beating the Ravens 23.
I'm going to swap out the Rams. And I'm going to put the Lions in the Super Bowl. Now, I'm going to have the Lions also winning the Super Bowl. The question is, do I be like every Tom, Dick, and Harry and say, okay, I'm going to swap out the Ravens I'm not going to put the Bills in there, and I'll put the Chiefs in there. I would love to see Lions and Ravens. That'd be fun. In New Orleans, a lot of points. I'm going to swap out the Ravens. I'm going to put the Chiefs in there. And here's why. And this is going to sound zany. I want the Lions to win the Super Bowl. And I think that the Ravens, because they have a better defense, would be able to defeat the Lions. And I know you could say, hey, the same thing. Hey, the Chiefs, they have maybe the best defense in football. And I know I'm not going to bet against, it's tough to bet against Patrick Mahomes, but that offense has been up and down. So I am going to say Lions and you know what? Screw it. I'm keeping the Ravens. Forget about it. I thought I was going to go with the Chiefs, and then I'm like, I don't want to do it. Because I saw to the corner of my eye, Santa give me a little smile like, oh, it's the Chiefs. Oh, the Chiefs. Screw it. I don't want Santa to be happy today. So I'm going Lions, and I'm going Ravens. I'm keeping the Ravens. I'm swapping out the Rams. Lions and Ravens in the Super Bowl. Lions win it all. Dan Campbell bite off some kneecaps and raise a Lombardi trophy. You think Dan Campbell would break the Lombardi trophy? Like, remember, we had Gronk. He was at Fenway Park. He was laying down a bunt with the Lombardi trophy. Brady was drunk as a skunk on a boat tossing the Lombardi trophy. Can't you just see Dan Campbell kind of being like Steve Austin, Cold Stone Steve Austin, and just take the Lombardi? Now, they don't have another Lombardi, but then he takes it like a large coffee or a beer and just smacks it together with the Lombardi trophy and then breaks the Lombardi trophy. Like, the Lions win the Super Bowl. I don't think that trophy makes it back to Detroit in one piece. I think, or it gets broken at the parade. That's how much mayhem would occur. All righty, so those are some of the predictions that we keep or some of the predictions that we change. It is the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. We will take a break. When we come on back, a guy that we thought was definitely going to get fired is now going to be back as the head football coach of one college team. We will discuss that headline when we come on back. Is this the right move or is it a mistake? We will get to that on the other side. Update time. Here he is, Rich Ackerman.
Infinity Sports Network Sports Flash.
And it's brought to you by PXG Golf. Staying long and straight on the golf course is easier than ever. With PXG clubs, take your game to a whole new level and save $10 per club at pxg.com/football. And use code football. Billy Napier isn't going anywhere, at least for now, as Florida AD Scott Strickland gave his embattled coach some support, preaching the need for discipline and stability in a letter today. The Gators are 15-17 under Napier and are 4-4 this season with some very bad losses. Already week 10 of the NFL season, and it begins with a showdown in the AFC North with the Ravens hosting the Bengals. Baltimore a half game behind the Steelers for the division lead. These two teams staged an overtime thriller last month, won by the Ravens. Now they meet on a short week. Head coach John Harbaugh said familiarity doesn't necessarily help in this week's preparations.
That's a two-edged sword too, because they have a lot of familiarity with us. So every game's different. Every game's unique. You just try to take it as it comes, attack the circumstances as they present themselves, and that's what we'll try to do and do our best.
The Carolina Panthers have given running back Chuba Hubbard a 4-year extension worth a total of $33 million, and the Sixers will reportedly be without Tyrese Maxey for a couple of weeks due to an injured right hamstring. I'm Rich Ackerman.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. 4 minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
This is the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network.
And this portion of the show is brought to you by Ethos Life, the easy way to get life insurance in 10 minutes, up to $2 million in coverage with no medical exam and just a few health questions. Get your free quote at checkethos.com. Not available in all states. So the Florida AD today, Scott Strickland, comes out and basically writes this letter, which was a letter of support for Billy Napier. You know, I said this for a while. I didn't think it was a matter of if Billy Napier was going to get fired. It was just when. And when you say something like that, I'm not going to be a smartass here and say, oh, well, that statement could still be true because the when could just be next year. But when you say something like that, you know that it's intended for at some point this season. So the fact that he's not going to get fired this season and he's going to be back next year is surprising because they got blown out at home up against Miami. Then they got blown out at home 2 weeks later up against A&M. And when you start the year 1-2 in what was viewed as a make-or-break year for Billy Napier, and especially how against A&M, right, Lagway had that big game up against Samford. I know it's Samford. They didn't go back to him. Then they started Mertz. That never made any sense to me. But since then, starting 1-2, they crushed Mississippi State. They beat UCF. And the coach should have been aggressive for it at the end of the game. Didn't. They lose to Tennessee in overtime. They then smacked Kentucky. And then they gave a respectable effort up against Georgia, where they lost their quarterback in the game, DJ Lagway, and thankfully the injury is not as bad as we thought with DJ Lagway. I thought he was going to be done for the year. They got Texas this week, and you look at DJ Lagway, he has practice. He did practice on Wednesday, so that's encouraging. But you look back at that game against Georgia, Florida did lead at one point 13-6. They were able to tie up the game in the fourth quarter, and they allowed 2 touchdowns at the end. So to be doing that with a third-string quarterback, because Aiden Warner wasn't the starter before the year was Mertz. And then you go to DJ, and then you go to him. That's a pretty impressive job for with what Billy Napier has been able to do. And it shows that his players believe in him. Because we've all been around situations where everyone says the coach is getting fired, and then the players tune out the coach, and the players basically just quit on the coach. But the fact that, and I understand, hey, it's 3-2 since the A&M game. But the fact that this ship hasn't totally sunk is encouraging. I'm not saying you're thrilled about it. Personally, I don't think this letter should have been sent out. But people start thinking about their futures in the present when the nature of the sport is right now with NIL and the transfer portal. And I thought this was the biggest part of the letter. Is in the aftermath of it. Pete Thamel does a good job for ESPN, outside of the Michigan stuff, but he does a good job reporting. And he said that 70% of Florida's name, image, and likeness money is tied to freshmen and sophomores, and there is a sense that losing Napier would also mean losing Lagway, who chose the Gators to play for Napier. So, if you're a Florida fan, you may ask, why was this letter released now? I don't think the people running Florida are dummies, right? They know in all likelihood, with their next 3 games being Texas, LSU, and Ole Miss, and then at the end of the season you have Florida State. You got to beat Florida State. What has happened with Florida State is criminal. They just missed the playoffs last year. They're undefeated, and then they are 1-8 this year. So I think the brass at Florida said, hey, we got to be proactive here instead of reactive. Because if we get smacked on Saturday up against Texas, everyone's going to say Billy Napier is going to get fired. And we don't want our players, especially our freshmen and sophomores, where a lot of the NIL money is tied up, 70%. We don't want those guys thinking, hey, the coach may be gone at the end of the year, even if we didn't fire him yet. So now I'm going to start thinking about my future. Because even though that window isn't open right now, if you are a player, especially when we're talking about 17, 18, 19, 20-year-olds, when you're in that range and you already start thinking about leaving, well, you have one foot that's still present, but the other foot is already out the door. And the odds of keeping that player there when you start to think about leaving, I don't think is very much advantageous for Florida. So this to me is Florida saying, we believe in the young roster. We know this is not going to be pretty probably the next 3 weeks or so. So instead of this question hanging out there and being talked about, on ESPN, on game day, being talked about on Big Noon Kickoff, when the topic of Florida comes up when the panel discusses those schools, and they discuss Florida and they discuss the hot seat at the end of the year, which coaches could be on the move. Let's give a voice of support for Billy Napier now. Here's the thing, though. And I know people want one opinion, to go one way, and you don't really want two opinions that could go another way. I could be on board in saying give it one more year, and then maybe with the young roster that you have, right, you could take that next step. But I always say this. Once you say in college a guy isn't the guy, and the majority of the fan base right now does not believe Billy Napier is the guy. And I'm not saying right at hiring. I'm saying after he's been there for a few years. Because you could make a hire, people could be like, oh, like when Dabo Swinney got hired at Clemson. People thought it was a bad hire. It was never going to work. And even though Dabo right now, I have my problems with Dabo Swinney and I don't like what he's done in the last few years, Dabo was, a rock star hire and better than anyone, even the biggest Clemson homer in the world, could have ever imagined. But once you have been deemed, like Billy Napier was deemed the guy going in, and once people lose that faith in you, you could win him back for a year. Like you may be able to win the Florida fan back next year. But I think encapsulating that feeling and then having it just go positive the rest of the way is very tough to do. And I just look at recent history. Neil Brown, right? Everyone was out on him. Had a good year last year, and now everyone's back out on Neil Brown at West Virginia. Mike Norvell, who I happen to like, and I never lost faith in. Going into last year, I know Florida State had a nice year the year prior, but a lot of people thought he wasn't the guy. Then everyone's like, he's the savior. Give him a contract extension after they went undefeated in the regular season and they won the ACC. And then this year, they go 1-8. Once you deem someone isn't the guy, especially in college, I think it's very tough to consistently change that narrative. So is this Florida saying, we believe DJ Lagway is very special? We know we're going to lose him if we bring in another coach? Yes. I think that's why they're making this move. They know the next few weeks probably aren't going to be pretty. Maybe the team, the younger players start playing better. Knowing coach will be back definitely for sure next year. Who knows? But this move is made because they're fearing the worst in the next few games up against three really tough opponents in Texas, LSU, and Ole Miss. And this is then telling their young players who your coach is going to be next year. And they're just throwing a dart on the dartboard and hoping that it sticks. But also, it would be naive of me to not acknowledge the other part of this conversation. In recent years, we have had very active coaching cycles. Like we have seen big-time names leave schools that we didn't expect them to leave. We saw Nick Saban retire from Alabama, Kalen DeBoer leave Washington and go to Alabama. We saw Brian Kelly leave Notre Dame and go to LSU. We saw Lincoln Riley leave Oklahoma and go to USC, right? We saw Wisconsin hire a new coach. Nebraska hire a new coach. And Luke Fickell and Matt Rule in the college world are big names. We've seen a lot of big names be on the move as of late. Right now this year, if you're looking to hire a new head football coach, I will say, especially in college, it doesn't mean that there's not a right name out there. But in terms of the popular names, there's not a lot of popular names that we anticipate being on the move. And in terms of like young up-and-coming coaches, obviously the Georgia DC is going to be highly sought after. We'll see if anyone makes a play, even though he's in his 60s for Cignetti after 1 year of Indiana. Like there's some names. But I don't think compared to like the last 2, 3, 4 years, there's like a bevy of names. And the hottest name linked to Florida was Lane Kiffin. And Lane Kiffin has had his ups and downs this year. That team already has 2 losses. A lot of people thought they were a shoo-in for the college football playoff, and now they can't afford to lose another game. And Ole Miss, when you take a look at them, right? They have Georgia this weekend, then Florida, then Mississippi State. So their season's on the line this weekend. Like, they should beat Florida. They should beat Mississippi State. But if they don't beat Georgia, already having 3 losses, one being LSU and the other being Kentucky, like, you're not making the college football playoff with the way that I look at it right now with 3 losses. So I think that also plays a factor in as well. It's who's the name out there, and do we think we have a realistic shot at getting Lane Kiffin? But if you're bringing in Lane Kiffin, I think that would bring excitement to the Florida fan base, but it would have been much easier to sell earlier in the year with what we thought Ole Miss was going to be. Like, if they missed the playoff, the Florida fan's going to say, well, he's in the SEC. People were just telling us a few weeks ago or a few months ago that back in the day, obviously, right, Florida's a much better job than Ole Miss, but it seemed like a lateral move with what it is now with the transfer portal and NIL. So if he wasn't getting it to work at Ole Miss in terms of taking them to a playoff on such a big season, is that exciting of a hire as what we thought it was going to be back in September? Now, I still think I'd rather have, here's the hot take of the day, I'd rather have Lane Kiffin than Billy Napier as my head football coach. But I think Florida's looking at this in these 2 ways. One, they don't think it's likely. And I think Lane would play up the drama, and there's a chance you get rid of Billy, you lose all your transfers, and then you look stupid. Because Lane loves the drama. And Lane, I don't think Lane told Florida, hey, I'm not interested. Lane likes Lane, right? Lane is in love with Lane. Lane is in love with himself. That's a dude, he looks in the mirror, he don't stop looking. So to me, you run the risk of Lane leaving you at the altar. And then, even though Billy Napier, right, is not this wonderful coach, at least you had 70% of your NIL money tied up to the freshman and sophomore, and you at least get them back next year. Or the majority, some will leave, but the majority of them, the big players, especially the quarterback, back next year. So I think the uncertainty if Lane would leave, and then the DJ Lagway factor, and what the schedule's about to be, and they know it's going to get ugly, that's why you get this message today that Billy Napier, we still believe in him, and we want you as fans at Florida in the swamp to still believe and give the benefit of the doubt to Billy Napier. Once again, I don't think it's going to work. I don't think it's going to work long term. Either next year or the year after that, I do think Billy Napier will be out as the head coach of Florida. He will get next year. There's no guarantee that he will get a year after that. But I think at most, this goes 2 more seasons. I would be very surprised if Billy Napier coaches 3 more seasons at Florida. Because once again, a lot of times we've seen, and there's some misnomers, but a lot of times you see, and some anomalies, but a lot of times when you are out on a coach, that's usually it for that coach long term at a program. Coming on back, the 5 disappointments this year in college football.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. 3 minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. .45 seconds remaining. .30 seconds remaining.
To infinity and beyond.
He's live. He's nationwide. This is the Zach Gelb Show. Here's your host, Zach Gelb.
All righty, hour number 3 of our radio program. That's right. It is the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. So we were just talking a little bit about Billy Napier. You know what's crazy? If I had to ask you at the end of September, when we would be in November, would Billy Napier be one of the 5 most disappointing storylines in college football? I would have absolutely said yes. But you know what's nuts about that? He's not even in my top 5 most disappointing storylines. And not only that, there is another program in Florida that I view as obviously more disappointing. There's no doubt about it. There's some things that we could discuss. But I think the most disappointing storyline in college football is not only the regression from the Florida State Seminoles, but now the questions about Mike Norvell and how DJ Uiagalelei couldn't even get to the Clemson game to kind of have a redemption moment up against Clemson. Like when I was evaluating the college football schedule before the season did commence, I remember saying this multiple times over the summer. One game that I'm really excited about was on October 5th when Florida State was going to play Clemson. And we didn't even get to have that moment. So you look at Florida State right now, like it's one thing to have a disappointing year with all the talent that they lost. Keon Coleman, their quarterback. You also lost Jared Verse and Braden Fisk. And we could go on and on and on and on. But for them to be 1-8, that could be like one of the biggest duds we have ever seen in college football. And I'm not saying that Florida State was viewed to be this powerhouse going into this football season. I picked against them to win the ACC. But I thought there was a chance that they could compete for a college football playoff spot. But to see this team lose to Georgia Tech and Boston College to start the season, and then after that, their only win is up against Cal, it's disgraceful. Memphis, SMU. I know SMU's having a heck of a season. Clemson, Duke, Miami, North Carolina. Like how they have not been able to win one of those games outside of Cal is just nuts to me. And Stu, Florida State plays Notre Dame this weekend. And that's at South Bend, for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, so it's a home game. Now, when you look at Notre Dame this year, they beat A&M, wonderful victory to start the season. And then they lost to Northern Illinois. Since then, Notre Dame, Purdue, Miami, Ohio, good victory up against Louisville. They beat Stanford, they beat Georgia Tech, and they smacked Navy. And they've had an extra week, right, to prepare for this game. Because you went to that game 2 weeks ago, correct, Amundo? 2 weekends ago.
Yes, 2 weeks ago. Yep, they were off last week.
So you were off last week, and you had an extra week to prepare for this game. Is there any thought? Because Notre Dame has restored their season. They have a very good chance of making the college football playoff. Their next 4 games, Florida State, Virginia. They play Army's in the top 25, but I think Notre Dame should beat Army. And they play USC at the end of the year, where that could be like Lincoln Riley's national championship, for crying out loud. So you can't afford to lose another game. But is there any thought for this weekend with how just dreadful, and I mean dreadful, Florida State has looked? Is there any thought, maybe we have overrated Notre Dame a little bit, and this is just one of those clunker of a games that they have, like Northern Illinois, and Florida State, who can't beat anybody outside of Cal this year, gets their second victory on the season? Like, you being a paranoid Notre Dame fan, has your mind at all gone to that spot?
No, it's more concern about, I think this would be third on the list in terms of toughest games left.
They stink.
It might even be the fourth of the 4, but I would be more concerned about Army and USC than Florida State. I just can't imagine losing to this Florida State team.
So Florida State stinks. Like, hey, we know that they're 1-8, but I would say they're the biggest disappointment of college football this year. Now, when we get to other disappointing storylines in college football this year, I'll give you 5 of them. Michigan's quarterback situation. Michigan has the potential to see 4 defensive players go in the first round of the draft. They could have 4 defensive players drafted in the first round. You look at, obviously, Will Johnson and Mason Graham. They're going to be in the top 10. You could maybe have 2 in the top 5, but it's going to be 2 in the top 10. And you see Grant and you see Stewart are the other 2 that could go in the first round as well. Now, I know that defense hasn't been as great as what we thought it was going to be, but it's tough to be as great as you thought it was going to be when the offense stinks. And Donovan Edwards, see, his career is going to be complicated when you look back at it, because Donovan Edwards is a Michigan legend. And it's not period stop. There's a but there. Like, I predicted he was going to have a monster national championship game, and he broke off 2 enormous runs. So he's a Michigan legend. But where he was the year when Blake Corum got hurt, and then last year up until the Natty having a down season, and this year he needed to be a stud, and he wasn't. It's weird when you look back at that legacy, because he's never been dominant for a consistent period of time at Michigan. And Kalel Mullings has been the better running back by far, and he used to be a linebacker. So I'm not saying that it's just the quarterback, but when you were Michigan and all we heard was Alex Orgy this, Alex Orgy that this offseason, and then when I'm in Vegas before the start of the season, I see Big John Jansen, and he goes to me, hey, I don't even think it's going to be Orgy. He was adamant it was going to be Davis Warren. And it ended up being Davis Warren. He stinks. You had the other quarterback, unfortunately, get hurt. He retires. And then you have Alex Orgy, who he can't throw the football. How Michigan, in the transfer portal era and the name, image, and likeness era, wasn't able to get a better quarterback or didn't know what they had in their room is just alarming. And I know Portnoy is now saying he's going to throw multiple millions of dollars at a quarterback through NIL. There's all these rumors out there who they're going to get for next year. But even if it wasn't a big name, I know Kyle McCord had one of the biggest stinkers we've seen this college football season at Syracuse. He's been really good this year at Syracuse, but that one game up against Pitt where he had 5 interceptions and had 3 pick sixes just in the first half. And how fun would that have been? If they would have got Kyle McCord at Michigan this year, and I know McCord's not a big-time quarterback, but the storyline with Ohio State giving up on him, just from that, it would be fun. But he would be looking like Joe Montana compared to the quarterbacks that they have in that locker room this year at Michigan. So Michigan's quarterback situation has been extremely disappointing. I shouldn't be surprised by this one, but I am just because of the fact that it happened again. Cam Rising is such a tough player. He's been through so much. Last year, I remember talking to Kyle Whittingham, and he was practicing Cam Rising, but he didn't play yet. And I said to Kyle Whittingham, do you kind of feel like the young kid on Christmas Eve where you know what you're getting for Christmas, but mom and dad said you can't unwrap the present, but the present's under the tree getting ready to get unwrapped? And he's like, hey, I've been asked about this a lot. It's the best way someone's asked me about it. Of course, we feel like he's getting close. And he never came back last year. And then this year, in and out of the lineup, and now he's done for the season. I know he has another year of eligibility they could get, but why at this point? This should be it for Cam Rising in college. But it was so disappointing that we didn't really get to see him play for the majority of the season this year. And it just stinks. And there's always a mysterious feel around Cam Rising when you go back to last year. I've also been significantly disappointed in Oklahoma State. Now, I don't know about you, Stu. And there's sometimes he's done some questionable things in the past. But I always think most of us have really enjoyed Mike Gundy because you go back to, I'm a man, I'm 40. One of the great rants of all time. The only other college football rant that I think I enjoyed more than I'm a man, I'm 40 is Dan Hawkins, when he's like, go play intramurals, brother. Go play intramurals. You get 2 weeks off in the summer, whatever it was. It was just a great rant. But Mike Gundy this year, he acted like a jackass in the offseason, and the other day he was a jackass too. And that football team is 3-6. And they have one of the more talented running backs in the country in Ollie Gordon. And Ollie Gordon got off to a miserable start. I know he had 126 yards right out of the gate. But then 49 against Arkansas, 41 against Tulsa, 42 against Utah, 76 up against Kansas State, 50 against West Virginia, 107 against BYU, 77 against Baylor, and then 25 against Arizona State. This has just been a year where you thought Ollie Gordon was going to have just like what Ashton Genty is doing. You thought Ollie Gordon could do that. Because last year, he had 1,732 rushing yards, 21 rushing touchdowns, and also had an additional receiving touchdown with 330 receiving yards. You thought that this guy was just going to be out of this world as a college football player this year. But so far this year, Ollie Gordon has 128 receiving yards and 1 receiving touchdown, and 593 rushing yards and 9 rushing touchdowns. But the disappointment is with Mike Gundy. Because Ollie Wright had a bad off the field issue, right? With the DUI. And then when they went to Big 12 Media Days, he tried to, when Ollie answered the questions, right? Still did go. He handled it the right way. But Mike Gundy tried to poke fun at drinking and driving, and he was like, oh, what he did wasn't really that bad. That was just stupid. And then the other day, he's doing his coach's show, and he's like, oh, the fans that are giving me criticism, like basically talk about their financial status and how they don't have a lot of money. And he had to apologize for that. Like, you want to look at some of the biggest clowns in college football this year, and I usually like Mike Gundy. But what he said right at Big 12 Media Day, and what he said the other week, this dude isn't in the running for, like, biggest sports clown of the year. You know, I'm not, like, big in doing those award shows, right? Like, at the end, oh, like a year in a review, let's give out awards. But if we were giving biggest clown coach of the year, if we were giving out Gelbies, you know, that's how we would do that dumb radio bit. Are you getting a Gelbie this year? All right, welcome in. It's the award show. This is the Gelbies, the first annual Gelbies for Clown of the Year when it comes in the coaching world. Mike Gundy. You look back at Mike Gundy, he poked fun at drinking and driving, you know, tried to say that it wasn't that serious, and then told all of his fans that basically you don't make any money, so how dare you be criticizing me as I sit on all my millions and just laugh in your face. Well, Mike Gundy won the first ever Gelbie for Clown Coach of the Year. And then you get the music. But this guy's a clown. He really is a clown this year. So my 5 biggest disappointments this year in college football: Florida State, the Michigan QB situation, Coach Gundy, Cam Rising, and then the final one. And it's funny. I'm not disappointed in it because I've never really believed that this guy is as great as what people make him out to be. But I look at Lincoln Riley at USC. That's got to be there. Because I know people were a little bit starting to get out on Lincoln Riley because of what happened with Caleb Williams. You had him there 2 years. You couldn't make the college football playoff. Yes, he won a Heisman Trophy, but last year was just a disaster for USC. And the bar was not incredibly high at all for USC. But you win that first game up against LSU. Miller Moss looks like he's going to be some stud. Then you lose to Michigan in a game that you should have won. All right, you bounce back with the victory up against Wisconsin. But since that, you know, they started out the year 3-1 with the loss to Michigan, which was a bad loss. They have lost 4 out of their last 5 games with their lone victory up against Rutgers. So they lost to Minnesota. They lost in overtime to Penn State, where that game, you knew one of those coaches in a big spot was going to find a way to urinate down their leg. At first, it looked like it was James Franklin. And then in the second half, Lincoln Riley, the management of the clock at the end of that game in regulation was one of the dumbest things I've ever seen a coach do. And then you lose to Maryland by a point in heartbreaking fashion. You beat Rutgers. The game was like 11-2. They were trying to get some of that World Series audience. And then you just lost to Washington. And now Miller Moss is benched, and you're going to Nebraska next weekend. That's terrible. And you know why I really dislike Lincoln Riley? Stu, and I saw Lincoln Riley coach when he was at East Carolina. Like, I remember Lincoln Riley when no one knew who Lincoln Riley was. I think Shane Carden was his quarterback at East Carolina, if memory serves me right. But you look at Lincoln Riley, it has nothing to do with me always feeling like he was slightly overrated because he never won a playoff game at Oklahoma. It has nothing to do with not taking care of business the last 2 years at USC. But do you have any idea, Stu, why Lincoln Riley just rubs me the wrong way and why I'm more critical than most for years about Lincoln Riley? Any clue?
Not sure.
Not sure. I think it's one fundamental, simple thing about me. The word accountability. Lincoln Riley, he's more accomplished than James Franklin. But he is in that school with James Franklin of when he loses. He may say he puts it on himself, but it's always some backward way of him putting it on himself. And then also, he tries to make the loss not as bad as what it seems. And he always issues some lame excuse or attacks the media and makes a big deal with the media and makes it out like the media was on the field when they're asking legitimate questions. Lincoln Riley is not a man of accountability. So I put Lincoln Riley as one of my 5 disappointing storylines this year in college football. So Lincoln Riley, Cam Rising, Oklahoma State with Mike Gundy, the Michigan quarterback situation, and just the terrible fall of Florida State this year. What are you most disappointed in with this past season so far of college football. At Zach Gelb on Twitter and Instagram, ZACHGELB. Make sure you give me a follow there and also give us a call, 855-212-4227, 855-212-4227. We'll take a break. We'll update you some of the biggest stories in the world of sports with some audio when we come on back with the news brief next. But first, sports fans, listen up. 1 in 8 men will be diagnosed with prostate cancer, and bladder leaks can be a side effect. That's why Depend is teaming up with the Prostate Cancer Foundation to encourage screening, because health is a long game, and it's yours to win. Now, here's the cool part. Through November, Depend is contributing up to $300,000 to prostate cancer research by donating 40 cents for every purchase of Shields guards and Real Fit products. Void in Mississippi. Learn more at Depend.com. That's Depend.com.
You're in a 4.5-minute break. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. .45 seconds remaining. .30 seconds remaining. 15 seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Time for your daily news brief. We get you caught up on the rumors, reports, and reconnaissance from the day in sports.
This portion of the show is sponsored by the new 2025 Hyundai Tucson Hybrid that has class-leading advanced safety features like the available blind spot view monitor to make your ride more enjoyable. I always find it funny whenever we now do Paper Shredder Thursday on the Zach Gelb Show because I always do a test shred just to make sure that the machine is still working because you never know around here. So every time I always go to the news brief sheet and I always rip off a little part of it and then throw it in the paper shredder. And now I look as if my dog kind of ate my homework and I'm trying to hand in the homework that had a little chew at it from Scruffy the dog or something like that. Let's start off with Adam Schefter. We played this earlier and I said with how Ben Johnson, who's a brilliant offensive coordinator, approached last year, and how it seems like he's approaching this year, I'm starting to get annoyed with the search of Ben Johnson. It's like, dude, just take a job already as a head coach. I know he can't do it right now. And already having this stuff out there, I'm just rolling my eyes about it. And there's been times where we all think a guy's going to be a phenomenal head coach as a hotshot coordinator, and it doesn't turn out this way. But this is Adam Schefter on everyone assuming Ben Johnson is destined for the Bears.
Ben Johnson's going to be very, very selective about the place that he chooses to go if he decides even to leave Detroit.
Good point.
He's going to be very careful. I don't know that he desires to leave that division, to head in the division, to go to a place that you're talking about the dysfunction that has existed within that organization. And let's just say 8 teams have him on their wish list. Doesn't mean he's going to be interviewing with 8 teams. Yeah. I think if Ben Johnson is interviewing with anybody this year, he's interviewing with the intent that he's going to take that job.
So that was one part. Now, maybe Schefter knows something that we don't know. Okay? Here's Adam Rank from the Sick Podcast with Adam Rank. Is it the Stick Podcast or the Sick Podcast? It's listed here as the Sick Podcast with Adam Rank. I don't know. That's an interesting name for a podcast. The Sick Podcast. I guess it depends how you say it. If you're like, oh, it's the Sick Podcast. Okay, I get it. But if you're like, it's the Sick Podcast, it go one or two ways. So here is Adam Rank on Matt Eberflus's future with the Bears.
I talked to some people within NFL circles, people who are close to Ryan Poles, and they indicated to me that regardless of what happens at all, Matt Eberflus is coming back regardless. They're not going to be in a situation where they just put him in the same spot that they put Justin Fields and Mitch Trubisky and Rex Grossman and everybody else. They're not going to do that. So I'm like, yeah, why not make this misery last longer?
Stu, you're our expert on incompetent football franchises. You're a fan of the Raiders. On a scale of 1 to Raider, how would that be if the Bears elect to bring back Matt Eberflus as their head football coach?
It's pretty bad. I'd say an 8.5.
Yeah, at least I'll give you guys credit. When you know you don't have the coach, you usually fire them rather quickly.
Yeah. Mid-season sometimes.
Yeah. PowerPoint presentations and all. Leave them on the runway. Yeah, that's brutal. You know what? The Bears deserve for Caleb Williams to be a bust if they end up bringing back Matt Eberflus next year. I would be rooting for the Bears to be a bleep show and be an unmitigated disaster if they bring that dude back as the head coach. You have a quarterback who still has to prove things, but this is supposed to be the crown jewel. And you can mess him up, but you can't mess him up, if you know what I'm saying. And if you bring back Matt Eberflus you are going to be messing him up. You just cannot bring him back. And if you do, shame on you. You deserve to never have a franchise quarterback. You deserve to never win a Super Bowl. And you deserve to be in the pit of misery forever. That's crazy that Adam Rank is here and that Matt Eberflus is going to be back either way next year. How can you do that? I don't want to believe that. I know Adam's very good at what he does. I do not want to believe that. I refuse to believe that. You can't bring back Matt Eberflus. You just can't do it. Malachi Corley. Remember him? He dropped the ball at the 1-yard line right before the goal line. Jets, Texans. Well, he had a chance to speak to the media, and this is what he had to say about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I just scored 200-plus touchdowns in my career, and never once dropped the ball in the end zone, so there's not too many coaching points to take away from that other than just, hold it another 6 inches,
How do you make that not be the moment that defines you as a player?
Oh, yeah. It's not a defining moment for me because imagine if I broke 3 tackles, juked the guy, and then I dropped the ball 1 yard in front of the end zone. You still did that same play, you know what I mean? But holding the ball 1 more yard is not a coaching point for anything. And if they gave me the ball again, I do the same thing over and over. So yeah.
Was that embarrassing for you at the time?
No, not at all. You just take things with a grain of salt. You don't play the game for a long time. You've seen a lot more or less embarrassing things happen on the field. So for me, it was just a learning experience overall. Still extremely excited to run across that end zone line and be able to jet around the field and do all that type of stuff. So it was fun overall.
That could be the dumbest response I've ever heard from a player. It wasn't embarrassing. It's a learning experience. I still got to run around and jet around, fly as if you're a jet and do all that. But it's not embarrassing because you got to celebrate, but you were celebrating something that didn't happen because of you just being reckless. Stu, that's stupid. I am disgusted what I just heard from Malachi Corley. That has to be AI. There is no way he got up in front of the media and actually said those things. And you know what the problem is, Stu? There's no accountability in the Jets organization. Zero. None. I understand having a player-friendly environment, but you need to have a coach. And I know Olbricht's the interim, but someone needs to pull this. This happened on Thursday. He spoke, this was yesterday. You had Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and early Wednesday morning to figure out what you were going to say. And that's what you said? There is no hope for that guy in the league. No hope. Because, Stu, it's one thing when you do something embarrassing, but then when you can't admit that you were in the wrong and you were embarrassing, you're just delusional. Or you just don't get it. That to me, Stu, I'm serious. I don't think he could have handled that any worse. I'm dumbfounded right now. I don't even know how to continue.
I could tell by the way you're talking.
I'm incredulous.
Took you a couple seconds to process what he said.
And I listened to it before we played it.
Oh, I know.
I was the one who sent this in the Slack because it was so stupid. But then hearing it again, it's even dumber than what I thought the first time. Do me a favor. You be a member of the media. Ask me about the play. I'll tell you what he should have said. I'll give him free advice. I want to lend a helping hand here. Go ahead.
All right. What did you make of the fumble, dropping the ball before the goal line?
Yeah, it was embarrassing. It was an egregious decision on my part. And I vow that will never happen again. I got to be better. Period. Stop. No one's then ripping you. Instead, you sound like a clown. Let's go to Kelly Stafford on TMZ. I saw this headline and I chose not to listen to it. Because I'm like, there's no way it could actually meet with the actual, what she said, the way it was quoted, with then actually listening to it. So Kelly Stafford complains about the Taylor Swift coverage. That wasn't the headline, but I've been seeing the way that it's been put online. Let's listen up to the audio.
I feel like there's just this, cloud hanging over with this Taylor Swift thing. I kind of got tired of like the Chiefs coverage of it. Actually, the NFL's coverage of this budding relationship last year. Can she do anything about that? No, she can't. You know what? It was a good business decision for the NFL, but I almost felt like it was outshining the games. And that I think that's what bothered me. I was like a little jealous of the fact that like they were getting all this attention. All of a sudden the football game was the sideshow. So yeah, maybe I let jealousy get the best of me.
So the way that I saw it is that Kelly Stafford says it's unfair that Taylor Swift gets attention at NFL games when her husband Matthew Stafford plays. And she basically said part of that in that answer. But could we just be honest about Kelly Stafford? It's not about that it's taking away attention from the players. She's just annoyed that the attention's not on her. She's jealous of Taylor Swift because Kelly Stafford has a very successful podcast. But she's not like hot take of the day. She is not Taylor Swift. And like she wants when she walks into a stadium, all the cameras following her until someone boos her like they did in Detroit. And she's like, how dare those Lions fans? They're animals. That is like and she even said, hey, maybe it's me being jealous. No, it is you being jealous. Whew, that's insufferable. Deebo Samuel, my best friend, he has this to say about the 49ers.
We turked out here this week. Got Christian back, got JJ back. Two of our main guys we need to come back, and it's all hands on deck right now.
Tell me someone who's trying to say something convincing and just does not sound convincing saying it. That is Deebo Samuel. Hey, there's reasons to doubt the 49ers, but they always get the benefit of the doubt. Now we'll see what they could do the rest of the way after what's been an up and down season so far. Here's Sean Merriman. He was on Bussin' with the Boys on Barstool. He had a good story about Phillip Rivers.
I love everything about Phil. The thing is, I hated him when he was at NC State because I was at Maryland.
Mm-hmm.
And, dude, I hated his guts, bro. Like, every time I saw it, like I said, I want to do something to him every time I saw him.
Yeah.
Because you see him on the film and he just chirping. I was like, dude, I'm going to kick his ass, right? His last play, his senior year, and I hit Phil in the back of the end zone. And I push up off of him, right? As I'm walking away, he ankle locks me, grabs my ankle, and start to twist it. I couldn't believe it that a quarterback was doing this.
Yeah.
He walked right up on me. We were about to fight in the back of the end zone. And at that moment, man, he got my respect. I was like, man, this dude is tough.
I think I could say this on the radio. Phillip Rivers is like a sick mofo. He really is. He really is. Sean Merriman, he's been in studio with us. When he sits down, his biceps basically, you feel them like rubbing up against your arm, and there's like 5 feet in between us. That's how large his biceps are. And Phillip Rivers just has a crazy mentality. And he's not afraid of anybody. You know, Phillip Rivers is one of the great competitors we've ever seen. Here is a joke, listen up to this, that Jim Harbaugh elected to tell in the middle of his press conference.
The middle of the season is always critical that way. Like Bill Belichick talks about the middle eight in a football game. I mean, there's a middle eight in a season too. You could break it down that way. 6, 7, 8, 9. I mean, those are important games. The only joke I know is why was 6 afraid of 7? Because 7, 8, 9. 6, 7, 8, 9. Those are big games.
Every time I see Jim Harbaugh now, and I saw it last year, and I love Jim, but I can't get it out of my mind. Just when he speaks and the way that he looks, he reminds me of my Uncle Gary. And my cousin Ryan, whenever we go out for dinner, and my Uncle Gary's there, he'll always tell like the lame dad joke at the table to the waitress or the waiter, and we like just cringe, just absolutely cringe. And that was like an Uncle Gary moment for Jim Harbaugh. Here is Doug Peterson. This was fascinating on Sam Darnold's breakout season.
Sam Darnold's seeming to click finally this season.
Oh, yeah.
First time in his career, first round pick. Why? Why is this the time for him?
Justin Jefferson? Because you were thinking it.
If we had to compare Doug Peterson to one of our colleagues around here, who would it be? I think there's one colleague that we could compare Doug Peterson to. And the one colleague is actually Ryan Hot Take Hickey. And here's why. Doug's going to see the reaction to that, and Doug's going to be, what's the big deal about it? I was just making a joke. I was just being honest. There's a naiveness to Doug Peterson like there is to Hickey. Where Hickey will throw something out there and be like, I can't believe like people are like actually, freaking out to this take that I gave. So I will compare Doug Peterson to Ryan Hickey. All right, let's listen up to Kirby Smart. This was just weird. Listen up.
Coach, I hope you can kind of have fun with this because it is such a big week football-wise. You're a visor guy, and you're pretty rough on your visors, especially during the games. I'm sure you are in practice, too. How many of those do you go through? Obviously, your white one matches very well with your white sleeves and black today. You pick them out. What's the process, if you could just shed a little light on that?
No process. It's whatever they give me. So for the game, they put one down there, and I wear it, and then I take it off after the game. The next game, there's another one there. There's 2 or 3 sitting in my office, and I just get one before I go to practice. I don't waste a lot of energy on things like that, Chip. Sorry.
Weird question, and just a coach that's in no mood in Kirby Smart to have any fun. All right, let's get to J.J. Redick. So there was 2 parts to this. Here's the first part, why D'Angelo Russell only played 21 minutes last night.
Level of compete, attention to detail, some of the things we, I've talked with him about for a couple weeks, and at times he's been really good with that stuff, and other times, it's just reverting back to certain habits. But it wasn't like a punishment. It just felt like, for us to have a chance to win this game, that was the route we wanted to take.
So, Stu, that's the first time I can remember. You watch every Lakers game, so maybe, you've seen more. That's the first time JJ's really gone after a player, it feels like, this year, and threw him under the bus.
I would agree. Yeah.
And then, it's not a punishment. I'm just trying to win a game. Like, you just drag the guy, and then you say that at the end. Oh, no, I'm just trying to win the game. Then afterwards, this is J.J. Redick calling out his team's effort before storming off the podium.
LeBron was fantastic tonight. The biggest thing that stood out, I had no idea he had 39 till I'm not looking at the box scores during the game, but, he played hard, He's almost 40 years old, and played the hardest on our team. Says a lot about him.
JJ, you're talking a lot about 2 or 3 guys, getting them to put in the effort. You talked a lot about wanting to play hard, and LeBron being the guy that played hard in tonight's game. How do you address that with the team? What's your philosophy for approaching that?
I just did.
Stu, did you see the whole press conference last night? Just wondering.
I didn't watch the full thing, but I saw a lot of the clips on Twitter.
So we condensed that for audio's sake. Like that first part happened 3 minutes before, then the final part. But it was just a reporter following up, and he just walked away.
He snapped. Yeah.
It was bizarre. And let me tell you something, JJ. I didn't feel bad for you in that moment. That was the first time he always has a sour look on his face. He always seems miserable because he always is miserable, it feels like, and he doesn't smile. Hey, he seemed really annoyed last night. Was that the first breaking point moment for J.J. Redick?
Yeah, I would say so. The other games, like Detroit the other night, I don't think he was happy, but it wasn't up to this level.
Yeah, all righty. Take a timeout. We'll come on back. We'll preview the Thursday Night Football game tonight. Here's Zach.
Infinity Sports Network Sports Flash.
Well, the NFL is officially past the halfway point of the season with Week 10 opening tonight with an AFC North battle between the Bengals and Ravens in Baltimore. John Harbaugh's team is 6-3 and is 1-6 of 7 after an 0-2 start. They also were victorious in the previous meeting, which went to overtime a month ago. The Bengals have recovered nicely from that setback with wins of 3 of 4. Head coach Zach Taylor said they'll have to make things more difficult for Lamar Jackson this time around.
He's playing with a lot of confidence. There's a lot of things that are double-edged sword when you're attacking him, whether you're pressuring, and he makes the extra guy miss, and now you got a whole world of problems because he's as unique as it gets in terms of his athletic skill set, but his ability to beat you with his arm.
Jackson threw for 348 yards and 4 touchdowns in the previous meeting. Joe Burrow had a big day as well with just under 400 yards passing, but tackle Orlando Brown Jr. out tonight. Billy Napier's tenure at Florida has not met expectations, but don't expect a change, at least not right now. AD Scott Strickland supported the embattled coach today in a letter. Strickland asked fans to stand behind Napier and that there is a need for discipline and stability. The Sixers' Tyrese Maxey are reportedly expected to miss a couple of weeks with a hamstring injury. I'm Rich Ackerman.
The Infinity Sports Network is on your smart speaker. All you have to say is, play Infinity Sports Network.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Hey, this is Howie. And this is Nick from the Backstreet Boys. And you're listening to the Zach Gelb Show. And guess what? Zach is back. All right.
He's live. He's nationwide. This is the Zach Gelb Show.
Oh my God, we're back.
All right, it is the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. Let me take a call here, and then I'll get to two takes that could emerge from tonight's game between the Bengals and the Ravens. Let's go to Mike in Abilene, Texas. Mike, what's happening?
The man, the myth, the legend, Zach Gelb, ladies and gentlemen. Best on the radio. Thanks for taking my call, brother. I just wanted to ask in the glory that is this 12-team playoff and the transfer portal that has created real parity. As a Buckeye fan, we are no longer able to just out-talent people. We saw that with Oregon. People are matching talents. This is the greatest thing that college football could ever have seen. Yes, there's probably some things we can tweak, but I am just so excited. You know, people that thought, we all said, well, with the 12-team playoff, teams like Ohio State and Alabama, they'll never miss. And look at this. Alabama, if they lose another game, they might be out. If we lose another game, we might be out. Like, it's just absolute madness, absolute craziness, and it's all just glorious to behold. And I just thought I wanted to share that with you, and I wanted to ask one specific question. If you have not even a dark horse, who's your favorite after what we've seen so far from...
Well, Mike, I didn't cut you off there. I think your line just dropped, but I could get the general nature of your question. I appreciate the phone call and the nice words. Yeah, you know, I will say, I wasn't a fan of going to 12. I still don't think it should be 12, but it's going to work because you could do anything to college football. And as long as college football is still going to be played, we're going to watch and we're going to love it. And the first round matchups, the way that they were projected the other night, do look pretty damn awesome. I think only 3 teams could still win it. And it's Oregon, it's Ohio State, it's Georgia, maybe Texas. I would still say, even though I don't love their quarterback situation, and they could lose this weekend, that it would still be Georgia. If you put a gun to my head on who's the favorite, I would still say Georgia, even though I ranked them 3 the other week. In Ohio State, they showed some toughness. I love Lanning, and they could definitely win a championship this year, and Gabriel's like a rock star. But I would still say it's Georgia. And then in terms of a dark horse, jeez. So I would say that Oregon, Ohio State, Georgia, and Texas would be in the group of favorites. I wouldn't consider Miami a dark horse. That's a great question. That's a phenomenal answer. You know, phenomenal question. Ooh, a dark horse. See, you know, I have never even thought about this, too, because I still only think 3 or 4 teams could win it. That's why I'm like, okay, if you want to expand, go to like 6 or go to 8. If I had to pick a dark horse now, and they're ranked 7th in the college football rankings, I don't feel good about this. Let me be clear, but I would say it's Tennessee because their defense played really well. If they get Nico Iamaleava playing like he did earlier in the season, then I would say that it would be Tennessee. But a dark horse to maybe make the playoffs, if you want to give a different conversation. You know, we talked about this the other day, like SMU, they're not a dark horse. They could win the ACC. They're at 13. I think whoever survives this weekend, LSU and Ole Miss, they could then find themselves back into making the college football playoff. But yeah, if Ohio State loses one more game, they're not out. They only lost 1 game on the season. Alabama loses 1 more game, yeah, they're definitely out because then they would have their 3rd loss on the year. All righty. Let me give you 2 takes that could happen from this game. So let's do it if the Ravens win. If the Ravens win, I think a lot of people tomorrow will be saying, great job by the Baltimore Ravens in terms of nailing the coffin shut on the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, let me be crystal clear about this. Even though I have been kind of pounding the drum saying the Bengals got to prove it to me, even at 4-6, there's no reason to believe that the Bengals turn it around. But with where their schedule is the rest of the way, Chargers solid, Steelers solid, Cowboys underwhelming, Tennessee no good, Cleveland no good, Denver fine, Pittsburgh solid. It's like even if they get to 6 losses, they could still be a 10-7, 9-8 team and still be in the hopper. But I do feel like the national sentiment would be, hey, the Ravens picked up their 2nd victory up against the Bengals. So then you kind of look at that. They would then have, if they ever got to a tiebreaker scenario, they would more than have the advantage, even though the Steelers are still in front of them. But I do feel like the national narrative tomorrow, if the Ravens win, oh, they slammed the coffin shut on the Bengals season. I don't know if that necessarily is true, though. If the Bengals win, I think there's multiple takes that come from it. Season saved. They're 5-5. Super Bowl push back on. And you know what I could start to see emanate a little bit from this Bengals victory? The push for Joe Burrow to win an MVP. I'm not saying he's going to win it. But right now, it feels like the national conversation is Lamar or Josh Allen. And I've said before, I give the slight edge to Josh Allen right now to win the MVP. He was my pick in the summer, so I'm going to continue to rock and roll with that. But Joe Burrow right now is 5th in passing yards. He's tied 2nd for touchdowns, and he is 2nd in QBR in the league. He wins this game, and let's say at 5-5, they go on to maybe win the division if the Ravens fall back and the Steelers come back down to earth. You're going to have a big-time MVP push for Joe Burrow. So this tonight could be the start of the MVP push for one Joe Burrow. That's what I think the takes are coming out of this game tonight. Now, in terms of who I like in the game, the spread is Baltimore -6.5. I'm going against every bone in my body right now. Because when I see a spread that says Baltimore 6.5, that's Vegas begging me to take the points with the Bengals. And when usually Vegas is begging me to do something, I then will just go the other way. So I don't like that spread tonight, but this will be an outlier moment for me. I would plus the 6.5 points on the Bengals. I like the Bengals to win the game tonight. And I know how overpowering Lamar and Derrick Henry are. And this Bengals defense outside Hendrickson has not been good. But we saw what happened last time, right? He threw 5 touchdowns, Burrow, and you think the Ravens defense would be better. Bengals just got to be serviceable tonight. You got to have a pulse. But I think this game means more to Cincinnati. Give me the Bengals tonight. Plus the 6.5 points. I like them to win the game outright. Good show today. Big thanks to Shane Beamer for joining us. Big thanks to each and every one of you. Back tomorrow on a Big Football Friday. We out. Bye-bye. Talk to you at 3 p.m. Eastern. Peace.